So, good morning and welcome. We shall now start the official pre-conference for Dev Partner 2016. As I said, it's all going to be hands-on. I'm going to do a few slides. You're going to do some exercises. The exercises are pretty simple. They're not strenuous at all. First exercise we're going to do is how to get started. That's just get the VM running, get the application running, and see what it looks like inside the UI toolkit. Then we're going to move on to menu and toolbar processing, because obviously a UI toolkit has a toolbar and a menu bar. And we're going to look at how we replicate that in the XAML, the WPF side. If you don't know WPF and you don't know XAML and you don't know this and that and MVVM and all those cool words and buzzwords and technologies, fear not. You don't need to do any coding in XAML. You don't need to understand any of that. It's all given to you. You're just going to be writing the synergy code that hooks things together. List processing, obviously quite a powerful feature in UI Toolkit. We're going to show you how you can take your existing list processing and make it a grid inside a WPF application. Input processing, well, if you don't have a Toolkit program with input processing, the chances are it's not much of a program. And then we'll finish off with field validation and calling existing change methods to do your validation and how we can plug that through into the WPF world. When you do, for the first exercise and the first few slides, you don't really need to worry about this. But if you do have your virtual machine up and running, I would recommend that you run up Visual Studio and you run up Workbench. Now, if you see a slide in the top right-hand corner, you see the Visual Studio image, or you see the Workbench image, what that's saying is this slide contains code that you can find inside that said program. And in the curly braces, it'll tell you what the file name is. And the reason I've done that is some of the slides have got a lot of code on, and it's impossible to read for me, never mind for you out there. Therefore, if you see that, it means go and find that file in that particular editor, and then you'll be able to see it on the virtual machine in front of you on your screen, as opposed to trying to read it on the big screen at the front. Doesn't mean you have to do that, it just means that is available for you to ease your eyesight. So, what we've got is a very simple Toolkit program. It starts off with a list. It's a list of parts. You can scroll through them. You can select an item in the list, and it takes you into edit mode, which brings up, guess what, an input window. The input window's got drill methods and a bit of validation, so you've got to have a valid group and a valid supplier and all that kind of stuff. It's got buttons on it, so you can delete the item you've just selected, or you can cancel back to the list if you've made changes and you don't want to keep the changes. It's got a menu. It doesn't actually have a toolbar. Our new one will have a toolbar, but it has a menu bar, and on it you've got a file new option, which allows you to create a new entry, and obviously a file exit. It's a very simple program, but it does the basics of what any Toolkit style application will do. List processing, menu processing, input processing, etc. So this is what it looks like. Very, very simple interface. You've got your list of parts or products. You've got your file menu with a new and an exit. It's got tabs on it because that's the sort of way we do Toolkit processing. The first tab has got your parts on. The second tab's got the input window, so we're not bringing an input window up in front of it. The new entry, as I said, allows you to create a new entry, exit the program, and double-click items to select them and take you onto the Edit tab. When you're on the Edit tab, you can type in part numbers, you can type in all the fields. It does handle things like where you've got the various fields, so you've got part ID and group ID. Obviously, if you're in new mode, you're creating a new one, all fields will be available to you because you have to have a part number, you have to have a group ID. If you're in edit mode, the part ID will not be available. That field will be there, but you won't be able to edit it. So it's got set processing involved inside the input processing. And we're going to emulate that as we go through the day into our WPF. This slide's showing you the drill method. It's a very simple drill method. There's no selection criteria. It just brings all the groups up or all the suppliers up. And the same sort of double click it to select it and take it back into the program, and cancel to close down the drill method. And again, it's drill method processing. We'll show you how to emulate that in the WPF side. Change method processing, validating your data. I did a blog about this. This is a really sort of no way of doing things. If you're going to tell the user, you know, that data's not quite right, it's really not nice anymore to put a big banner up and a big message with big black icons all over the place that say, stop, you have done something wrong, you cannot enter data like that. It's much nicer if you sort of say, do you know what, that's not quite right, you better come back to it later. But I'll let you carry on and do other things, don't worry about it, but I'm not going to let you sort of commit the form until you've fixed it. And I'll give you a little indication of that as we're going through. That's what will change the WPF side. It'll be a lot more sort of new user-friendly. But we'll still keep the same change method processing and the same logic, the same validation rules. We're not going to change what the application does. We're just going to change the way it looks. The input window and the list, they've got buttons on. The save button, it will save any changes you make. The cancel button cancels what you're doing and takes you back to the list. The delete button does work, so if you really want to annoy yourself and ruin your entire day, start at the top of the list, select delete, select delete, select delete, select delete. You cannot restore the data. Would be a good idea. About Workbench, we're going to be working in both Workbench for the traditional Synergy stuff and the Visual Studio for the .NET, Synergy.NET stuff. So we're basically using three types of compiler technology. Our traditional compiler that compiles Synergy code, our Synergy.NET compiler that compiles Synergy code, and the sort of XAML compiler that compiles the XAML UI code. A couple of times you will be asked to run up a command window. To do that, open an OS shell from within Workbench. That'll bring up a command window, and it will then, the instructions will tell you what to type inside that command window. I think you only do it once or twice, but it's important that you run the OS shell from within Workbench, because the logicals and the environment that's set up within Workbench gets transferred into that command window. So if you just did Windows key R, CMD, and bring a command window up, you're not going to have the right environment, it won't work. Open it through Visual Studio. And then this slide is the best slide as we go through the whole slide deck, because this is where I stop talking, and this is where you start working. Okay? So we're up to exercise 1 already. It's a very simple exercise. Now, there's no real typing to do in this exercise. It's really just get the VM running, run the program, see how it works.